I want to welcome you to this committee hearing. I'm joined by my dear friend and wingman, Councilman Ed Reyes. Mr. City Attorney, we do not have a quorum, so any actions that we take from this point on would be considered a communique from the chair. I do have some housekeeping business. Alan?
Sir, yes, sir.
Did any member who testified before this committee prior to the Lakers winning the championship, did any of them pick the number of games, and or did any member of this committee and our brilliant staff pick the?
I don't recall that anybody had it correctly. I think your gut.
I said 7.
You said 7?
Well,
I was disillusioned from the Houston series.
the example is to always follow your first thought. I think we had individuals that said the Lakers would win it in 4. Most of the consensus was 6, and we did have at least 1-7. And I will not mention Mr. Reyes' name.
Disillusioned. The Houston series, I blame that experience.
And the only other item, just to pass on, I went and I got some more eyeglasses Saturday. And the woman that was fitting me for my eyeglasses, we talked about grandchildren. And she said, you raise your children and you enjoy your grandchildren. So I had the opportunity to babysit my only grandchild alone. So I didn't have my wife there to supervise my behavior, nor did I have my son and my daughter-in-law there to supervise my behavior. So I decided that I would take him to the little market because they forgot to give me the milk, and I got devilish. I bought a small container of chocolate milk. And so
No cigars?
I gave him the chocolate milk for the entire, had him 3 hours. He loves me anyway, but he really loved me Monday. So when my son and daughter-in-law come to pick him up, and he's excited, and they ask, did anything happen out of the norm? And of course my answer was no. No, everything I get a call from them yesterday saying, what happened? His diaper just exploded off. So I said, I don't have a clue. You told me to give him milk, and that's exactly what I gave him. So to learn from that, if you do chocolate, don't tell.
Don't leave it, or don't leave your grandchildren with her.
Yeah, or the moral of the story is don't leave your children with me. That's what Mr. Reyes said. Okay, we've got some items that I think we can dispense of quickly. Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 1.
And Sir Meg Barkley with the CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to awarding contracts on an as-needed basis to a pre-qualified list of public art fabricators and technicians to assist with the implementation of upcoming public art projects.
Okay, now my recommendation will be that we receive and file these items. But before I do that, I do want to say, Cecilia, you and I work very well. So the last time we had a problem with this issue and your people went in and fixed it. Then they brought back another problematic item, and we requested that they fix it, and it's my understanding that you're going to redo this or what have you. The point I'm trying to make is we don't want to make this request again. Okay. All right, then with that said, as a communique from the chair, we will receive and file both the CRA report and the CLA report, bringing us to
Item 2, sir. Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the CLA and a resolution relative to the use of CRA tax increment funds from the Hollywood redevelopment project area for the Metro Park Phase B affordable housing development.
Item 2, we will adopt the CLA report. Item 3,
Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the CLA and a resolution relative to a disposition and development agreement with the Child Development Institute for the adaptive reuse of the former Canoga Park Library.
okay, item 3 will adopt the CLA report. Item 4,
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CAO relative to providing a loan in the amount of $1.4 million to 7th and Coronado Apartments for the development of a 68-unit large family affordable housing project.
okay, item 4, we will adopt the CAO report. Items 5 through 10,
Items 5 through 10 is CRA reports and a CAO report on all of these items and resolutions relative to entering into contracts for and the issuance and sale of tax allocation bonds or notes for the East Hollywood Beverly Normandy Earthquake Disaster Assistance Project. Number 6 is portions of Council District 3. Number 7 is the Adelante East Side redevelopment project. Number 8 is the Central Industrial Redevelopment Project. Number 9 is the City Center Redevelopment Project. Number 10 is for portions of Council District 7. And there's an amendment that's been provided to the city clerk to specify that on item 7, Adelante East Side Redevelopment Project should not be obligated to repay any internal borrowings from the CRALA general revenue, and that all net proceeds associated with the anticipated bond issuance for the FY10 work program. Budget all net proceeds associated with the anticipated bond issuance for the FY10 work program for that project area.
okay, then on these items, we will adopt the CAO report
Mr. Chair?
with the amendment. Yes, Mr. Reyes?
On number 5, if maybe we just, for the record, correct that District 1 is not part of that program, since
Can we add that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we will go to item 12.
Item 11?
No.
Item 12, I'm sorry. Item 12 is an LHD report relative to executing a contract in an amount not to exceed $500,000 with the Economic Roundtable to conduct an affordable housing benefit fee study.
Okay, on item 12, we'll adopt the Housing Department report. That brings us to item 13.
Item 13 is a motion, Perry Rosendahl, relative to the implementation of the South Los Angeles 5-year strategic plan.
Okay, then we'll adopt the motion with the amendment.
Just a
There
moment.
is an amendment.
There is an amendment on this item to allow the chair of the Public Works Committee or the Board of Public Works Commissioner as the designated SLA advocate to be authorized to accept donations of $20,000 or less on behalf of the city for the SLA 5-year strategic plan and administer those funds as described in the language provided to the clerk.
Okay, then again, we'll adopt the motion with the amendment. Now, who do I want to ask? Do they have, isn't there like no such thing as the 13th floor? Right? They don't, that's like an unlucky thing, and then they,
But not in government.
In this building, there's a 13th floor.
it is?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to suggest maybe we
We don't have
don't
item
use item 13. Anyway, item 14.
Item 14 is a motion, Alarcon, Huizar, Perry, Reyes, Parks, relative to the development of Banking Development District program.
No, I'm not going to say that. Boy, did I have a good one. Cecilia, I'll tell you this one in private. You'll love it. Item 14, then we will adopt the motion. All of this, Mr. City Attorney, will be listed as communication from the chair. We've got Noel, haven't seen you in a while, and it's my understanding that you wanted to make you wanted to do public comment and a comment on item 13. So, item 11.
Mr. Chair, did
I don't know why I just thought 13. Anyway, yes, Mr. Reyes.
we call 14 special? Or can I make my comment now, or do we call it special 14?
Okay, we already took action on
Okay.
14, so what we'll do is, I'll let Mr. Weiss speak, then we'll come back to item 14. Mr. Noel Weiss on item 11.
Item 11. Okay, awesome. Let me just... Thank you, Herb. Mr. Reyes, good morning. How are you?
What?
Herb, on item 11, basically my comment relates to the fact that I know the Housing Department endeavors mightily, but the report I thought was a little bit deficient. Maybe at some point I'll do a Jim McQuiston and give you a detailed outline of it. But what I've handed you is basically some information on TOPA, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. Andrew was kind enough to give me some time last week on it. I think hopefully the political winds are flowing in a way that will make the reception of the idea a little bit more welcome in terms of the rest of the council. The goal, the materials relate to Washington, D.C.'s program, and obviously the key is funding, but I think the Housing Department really needs to evaluate it better than they have. Now, Janice got it into the housing element last August, so it's there along with the inclusionary zoning. I think the TOPA idea can basically get what Mr. Reyes and what you, Herb, want to get done, which is basically the inclusionary zoning ordinance, because it can kind of smooth out the rough edges if we can get a TOPA opt-out as well as potentially an inclusionary zoning opt-out. That will, what we're talking about, in fact, yesterday we created a lot of value for developer Mr. Caruso when we basically rezoned his property. What TOPA is going to do is it's going to do the same thing for tenants, because it's going to give them value. It's going to give them assets that they basically can use and leverage to partner with affordable housing, either profit or nonprofit. Maybe even partner with the CRA and CRA projects in terms of some potential funding there. We got to really explore it, gentlemen, in a more detailed way than we have, and it will only happen if you, the policymakers, tell the people in the Housing Department and planning that this is something that you care about, that you want to see happen, and at that point, I think they will begin to take it a little bit more seriously. It's been the law in Washington, D.C. for 27 years. They've been doing deals for that period of time. The material I gave you just dates back to 2002, and it just scratches the surface. So I just want to basically have some opportunity for some direction from the City Council to the Housing Department when we're talking about providing for the middle class, basically protecting that middle class, empowering the middle class, uniting the city under a common social value, which is basically home ownership. I think it would be a remarkable addition to the policy that you're trying to create. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Barclay, or Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Reyes wanted to make a comment or two where related to item 14.
14.
We moved that as a communique from the chair. I'd like to put it back on the table.
And what was the action on item 11?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for saving me. I wasn't testing you. I had a senior moment. On item 11, we will receive and file the Housing Department's report. Now, help me with item 14, Mr. Smarty Pants.
You may reopen it.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to address this item 14. In this particular item, I wanted to ask to have a report back to the Plum Committee, given its impact on different locations and how we can create incentives in zoning matters. So we look at a bank development district program. How does that interface with our capacity to establish mixed-use scenarios? How do we look at zoning patterns? How do we look at entitlement packages that can benefit those who would want to participate in a partnership? In many of the areas in which we need banks, it's also very hard to locate because of the overwhelming need for space. Mostly every corner, every section of these areas that have that dilemma it's hard pressed to find the locations. So how we develop mixed uses and create incentives for the banking industry, I think would require some zoning actions or incentives that we can address in partnership with other policies that might emerge from the various departments other than planning. So if I can ask for a report back in Plum, we can do that.
That's no problem. In fact, that's my era. Your staff did indicate that you wanted a report back to Plum. I just wrote my notes for the wrong item. So,
No problem.
so
Appreciate that.
on item 14, we will adopt that motion and keep in mind Mr. Reyes's concerns that when it comes back, that it comes back to Plum Committee as well.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, Mr.
no, my pleasure. So that brings us to item number, no, we did one. So that brings us to item 15?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could we read item 15? Oh, you know what? I'll take a break. Noel, you want to just come up and do your public comment now? Are you prepared, or you want a few minutes, or what?
No, I'm happy to do.
Come on. Mr. Weiss, Noel Weiss, for public comment.
Thank you. Part of our issues are relative to, again, the inclusionary zoning ordinance. There's obviously an SB 1818 component, because if you want to get the council to vote for the inclusionary zoning ordinance, you're going to have to basically sell the community an SB 1818. Obviously, that relates back to the TOPA. But part of the issue now that we've gotten some court input on some aspects of the SB 1818 law that basically the judge overturned. What I would like the council and the committee to consider doing is having the planning department, again, we're talking directive from the policymakers to the planning. We need this information, Herb, and Mr. Reyes, on how many SB 1818 projects during the last year since the implementation ordinance was passed, where they stand in the pipeline, how much affordable housing was lost versus how much affordable housing was gained. Now, this is something that the council itself asked the planning department to issue, both by way of motion from Bill Rosendahl as well as Jose Huizar back in February of '08 when the implementation ordinance was passed. That directive from the council to the planning department said, we the council want to hear in a year where we stand. Well, you know what? It's now June of '09, and it was passed in February of '08. This information is being sat on is not really the right word, but it's basically being held up. And honestly, you need it as policymakers. We, the public, need it. That data, it's really, really important, because we're going to have to revisit the SB 1818 to a certain extent, again, as part of, I think, the entire process of getting this inclusionary zoning ordinance thoroughly debated and passed. And I just want to ask for both of you gentlemen to use your influence. In fact, Mr. Reyes, Jose Huizar just introduced another motion back in April. Again, it's before your committee. And if you could, again, just communicate through your committee to the planning department, process that motion. I have a copy for you here if you don't know what I'm referring to. And basically, it's 09-0966. And it basically, again, says we need that data and information. So if we can somehow get that accomplished, I would be most grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice.
And it's mixed income housing ordinance, Mr. Weiss.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Okay, item 15, Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 15.
Item 15 is a report from the CRA relative to the 2008-2009 Education Revenue Augmentation Fund lawsuit between the CRA and the State of California.
Okay. You're on.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Reyes.
Do you give your children chocolate milk?
No, I love you, Herb. You're never babysitting my boy.
Maybe I give them strawberry.
So we actually submitted a written report, I think, May 9th, at the time that we had heard, and we had informed many of the council members, that the California Redevelopment Association had prevailed in its lawsuit against the state of California, challenging their sweep of $350 million of redevelopment funds through the ERAF transfer. So that's what's in your file right now, is that report. Just last Tuesday, however, there's been some major changes. So first of all, let me just bring you up to speed. So we won that lawsuit in Superior Court, and in May, the state filed an appeal of that decision. That's not unsurprising. But then, just last week, on Tuesday, June 15th, the State Senate Budget Committee voted to include a trailer bill as part of the budget proposal of the Democrats to sweep $1.05 billion of redevelopment funds statewide over the next 3 years. So that's $350 million for the current fiscal year that we're in, as well as next year and the following year. So, and they attempted to draft this trailer bill around the Superior Court's ruling. And so for example, they stated that redevelopment agencies would have to transfer funds to school districts that had attendance districts located in project areas, and then those school districts would transfer those funds to schools that had attendance districts in project areas, trying to get around the judge's ruling that, in fact, sending redevelopment funds to schools does not provide a redevelopment benefit, right? Because there was no relationship between taking the money, sending it to Sacramento, and benefiting schools. We still think we have a pretty good case against even the redraft, because although the money would go to school districts with theoretically who have schools that are in project areas, the state would then take away that same amount of money from those school districts. So there's no net benefit to the districts, and therefore no net community redevelopment benefit. And that was the whole basis of the state court's decision, that sweeping this money did nothing to advance redevelopment under state law. So our California Redevelopment Association board, of which I am a member, authorized our executive director to file a lawsuit challenging this latest attempt to sweep funds. And I believe it is today that the legislature is going to be voting on the whole package of trailer bills, including the ERAF sweep. And it is expected that those trailer bills, the entire package, will fail today. But let's just assume that there is a budget resolution one way or another, and that the ERAF sweep stays in. The implications for CRALA are that we're going to lose $45 million, about $45 million over the next 3 years, including the current fiscal year in. So that's $15 million of this current budget year that we would need to make a transfer of payment to these school districts or the state. This is really a big blow to us to do it for 3 years, and let me explain why. We're projecting that over the next 2 years, CRALA will experience a 26 to 47% decrease in tax increment funding. So that's nearly a 50% increase that's going to plummet in the next 2 years. So we can make it through this fiscal year, but by FY 10-11, we have nearly half of our project areas will not be able to cover their debt service, their operating expenses, and the ERAF payment with new net revenues. We will not be able to pay our bills out of that revenue that comes in that year. So that's a pretty dire situation. If it were 1 year, maybe we could survive it, but 3 years is hitting us right when we're going to be at the nadir of our drop in revenue.
Can I jump in and ask you a quick question? Is there a way for you to update us where it relates to the actual lawsuit? Can you kind of walk us through the progress or lack thereof as it occurs? Because that's critical. You see, in the state, there was this movie with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. It was called The Great Race. And there was a scene in there where these guys were sword fighting, and one guy was better than the other guy. And the one that wasn't that good looked at him and said, "He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day." And that's what they do in this state. So they just want to come up with what's on paper, balances their budget. So my main interest would be from the attorney for the association to be briefed on where we are, because that's the whole deal. If they can legally take it, it's gone.
Absolutely, we understand that.
Okay, if legally, the ruling is not overturned or what have you, you guys won before, then we'll be okay. But so for me, I understand the situation this would put us in. I'm going to let you finish. But I think for us, we need to continually just follow what, the progress is of the lawsuit. In Sacramento, in fact, I wish that we at times could use some of those things here, but I think we've already used all the accounting maneuvers and what have you that we can. And it wouldn't be the first time that a budget was put together with revenue projections that were questionable at best. And I think that it's not just this taking from the CRA. There are other projections where 182 million, I can't remember, some kind of releasing prisoners or what
Prisoners,
have
yeah.
you, where in essence the reality is that might only be 46 or 50. I mean, so there's going to be a lot of talk like that. But again, and I will let you continue, I just want to know where we are with the lawsuit, because that's the
Right.
only thing that
And we, at the Redevelopment Association, agree. We think we don't have the political juice to be able to win in the legislature when other programs are being gutted. So our best strategy is to continue to litigate. As an aside, Chairman Wesson, when the Joint Budget Committee took this action, they told our lobbyists, don't even think of suing us, because then we'll sweep it for 4 years. Well, that just emboldened our board to authorize our executive director that next day to file a lawsuit if he deemed it necessary. So my anticipation is that if this trailer becomes part of the final budget package, we will file a lawsuit challenging it, and we will litigate, because that's really our only defense. And that means that we're, CRA, are going to have to pay an assessment as part of the Redevelopment Association to fund that litigation. We did it last time. I think it was money well worth spent, and we'll do it again. So we will keep you posted the moment we file that litigation, and as we have any motions or court rulings, we'll certainly let this committee and you know immediately.
And again, the movie was The Great Race,
The Great Race.
and Peter Falk was in it as well. Okay.
Outstanding.
If you're the great Leslie, does that make...
Oh, you saw it.
Of course.
That's a little
Does that
frightening.
make Andrew Max?
Yes.
No, that would be Professor Fate. If you were Professor Fate, he would be...
This Alan is good. In fact, I think I will change my name to The Great Leslie.
You have to wear white every day.
Every day, and when I smile, a little bling. Yeah. It's a great movie.
So
It's a
the
great
last
movie.
point I want to make about this is, in your report on this item, we had noted that all the money that we'd set aside and all of the work program that we had line itemed out to pay this, make this payment, we would restore. And obviously, we're no longer in that situation. So you have a Schedule B that details, and your regional administrator and project manager should have met with each one of you to describe how we were going to deal with the ERAF shift. So those cuts will remain on the table until we have a resolution of the lawsuit.
Hey, when we filed the lawsuit the last time,
Mm-hmm.
how long did it take before that was settled, I guess?
Pretty expeditious.
Wasn't
We did it in, I think we filed in November, and we had a decision, we had oral arguments in March, and we had a decision by May. So there's a lot of debate about the right strategy. Do we go back to Superior Court? Do we go to the State Court of Appeals? So there's lots of discussion about the best strategy, but they moved quickly, and we had an excellent attorney team.
Mr. Reyes?
In terms of timeframes,
Yeah.
what is expected, and when you see, I mean, they're going to take some time to come to a decision, so what's the,
Well, the latest we heard from our lobbyists for the Redevelopment Association is that they actually expect that there would be a budget by the end of June, because the situation is so dire in terms of the cash flow problem and the state not being able to borrow to deal with its cash flow unless it has a real budget. So we anticipate there will be a budget by the end of the month, and then as soon as that's final, boom, we'll file a lawsuit. And then it could take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to resolve. That's not something we control.
so when we look at our programs,
Mhm.
and assumptions will be made if the money's there, or if it isn't, am I
Right.
correct? So is there a way to look at this roadmap of investments and or programs that delineates where that resource would have gone, and is there a plan B for them?
Yeah, there absolutely. I mean, we've gone through with each of the project areas, and when we produced this list, we made the project managers and regional administrators go back to talk with the council office on, okay, where can we trim, and how can we accommodate this? We'd need to do the same thing for next year's budget, which I believe is coming to your committee July 8th. So we were instructed by the Redevelopment Association not to send the check until the court case was resolved. So we didn't, and that was the right thing to do, because we ended up winning the case. And then we thought we'd restore it to the budget. We're going to hold back a reserve just in case we lose, but we're going to continue to move forward on our work program, and we will be working with your offices for the FY09-10 budget to see where we could shave if we had to, if we were unsuccessful in our litigation.
Why don't you just say fiscal year?
Okay, I'll say fiscal year.
FY 2000. I mean,
Okay, you don't
I'm
like it,
old
huh?
school.
All right.
No, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
no, I don't-
okay. I get it. I'm just,
Yeah.
Well, looking at the fiscal year that this will impact, each council member should at least be thinking about
Absolutely.
where they're going to set their priorities
Mm-hmm.
and looking at what they feel is absolutely untouchable versus the
Yeah.
flexibility in others, so.
And what we've been able to do in the past is sit down with you and say, okay, here's your debt service obligation. You can't touch that. Okay, that money is, we can't default on bondholders. We talk about operating expenses, then we talk about all the projects that we've already made a financial commitment to. It's gone through board approval, city council approval. We've entered into a contract where if that developer moves forward, we're obligated to provide that financial assistance. So think about affordable housing projects that are applying for tax credits.
Right.
So those are obviously ones we can't touch. And then we kind of show you then, here's what's left. Here's what's left, and here's how much your project area would have to pay in order to satisfy the state obligation if it were to prevail.
And it's been made clear to, I believe, the council office, I know it's been made clear to my office, that CRA funds can only be used for X, Y, Z purpose.
Correct.
Now, just given what Joe Citizens is going through with all the cutbacks, we're going to get cutbacks in our senior services, in our child care, in our work programs, and as far as our public parks go. And people are going to say, well, I'll just have the CRA do it. And there are applications that are qualified and there are others that are not. Is there a way to put just a fundamental, or there a basic one-sheeter that says this is what CRA money does or doesn't do?
We can certainly do that. I mean,
Just so that we can have that available to folks, because by law, there's only certain things we can do.
right.
There's policy-driven decisions.
And then there's legal
Well, that's an
constraints.
excellent idea.
I mean, that, we can certainly do that, so that you kind of have a cheat sheet that you can provide to various constituent groups as they come to you seeking specialized funding.
Because there was a say, CRA's taking your money, CRA's ripping you off, CRA's corrupt, and CRA doesn't do this and that, and
Right.
they don't understand the legal parameters and everything else that goes with the CRA. So that would be at least a one-pager.
That's an excellent
Okay.
idea.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I already said I had one more thing to say. Can I say one more last thing?
No, yeah.
We're going to, I think I said this the last time I appeared before you on ERAF. Our projections on the budget of a 26 to 47% decline over the next 2 years are based on the last recession, right? We have to plan for that. We're going to have hard numbers on how far property tax receipts have fallen around September. So what I've already, I think, shared with Chairman Reyes, Mr. Reyes, and maybe Mr. Wesson, the projections for your individual projects areas, just based on this real, it's not entirely speculative, but from past experience. But we want to come back to you in September and show you what happens with the real receipts. It may fall faster and steeper than we anticipated, because we do know that property values have fallen faster and farther in this recession than I think in 70 years. So our projections may not be conservative enough, and that surprised us. But we'll know more in September. So we'll come back to you with more projections when we have real numbers.
So, or when was the last time that the agency felt that it was a recession? Because you're saying these decreases are based on...
Yeah, this was in the 90s. So this was all through the 90s, and property tax increment fell precipitously. For the agency wide, it was about 26-30%. For Bunker Hill, it fell well over 50%. So if you did it across the agency, it was 47%. Most of the project areas returned to their pre-recession levels in about 6 to 7 years. It took Bunker Hill 12 years to recover.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, 12 years. And this is a different type of recession because it's not starting in the commercial sector, it started in the residential sector. But we worry about areas in particular that had enormous run-ups in property values in their commercial land in the last 3 or 4 years, principally Hollywood, Wilshire Center, Koreatown, North Hollywood. Those are the ones, and downtown, which we're most worried about. So they experienced the largest growth, the steepest growth, the fastest growth, and we think they might be extremely vulnerable to property tax reassessments. All you need are a few property owners to go in and do some appeals and win those appeals, and you'll see your increment drop in 1 year. So they may appeal the last 3 years of property tax assessments, and it'll take them a couple years to go through that appeals process. They win, and it wipes out 3 years of property tax increment in the next year. So it'll go from this to that in 1 year.
So it could be higher than that.
It could be higher, and it could happen faster. It could all happen in 1 year. We were trying to normalize it over 2 years, is what happened in the last recession. That's all we have to base it on now, Herb. So, but like I said, in September, we'll have better numbers. We'll have actual numbers.
Mr. Reyes?
Yeah.
But doesn't that trigger, if we wanted to be proactive and positive about this phase we're going through, doesn't that trigger us to look at policies such as transfer floor area ratios and all the other mechanisms that create value? Doesn't that speak to our ability to be more aggressive about establishing that so that we can gain back value that we lose? I mean, if we look at key areas around transit-oriented districts, around rail stations, around parks,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, this is where the resistance should be the least, because now we can show the economic variables as to how value does go up if we promote and process these policy changes. Because we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. And certainly at CRA, we have created a strategic plan around what can we do during this downturn that will help lay the foundation for rapid reinvestment once capital markets start flowing again. So we're preparing 3 master program EIRs that'll make it easier for developers to come in. We're doing the infrastructure that the city hasn't been able to do for the last 4 years. We'll go in and do the infrastructure now, which creates immediate jobs.
But when-
And that will, again, help promote investment once it comes back. But some of the ideas about TODs, increased concentrated development there, transfer floor area ratio, those are all excellent strategies that we can kind of put the pieces in place, but it still depends on the capital markets being willing to invest in it.
But we can set the table for it.
Exactly right.
Because right now, when
Yep.
we do it in robust times, folks don't want change because they feel they have their golden nest there, and they don't want to disrupt it. But now that that nest is now essentially disintegrating, they're looking for ways to bring up their value again, and I think this is the path of least resistance. We went through the cycle in 01, 02,
Right.
and I saw how people resisted that change, especially around the east side of downtown and in the southern part of downtown and in certain pockets in the city. When I took the Plum Committee to discuss inclusionary zoning, we talked about how you create value to supplement housing. And folks did not want to do it. They just did not want to do it.
No, that was the old motion. He's not talking about.
Right.
Because now we're talking about
I was going back to 0102 because no one wanted to disrupt the proverbial apple cart and how good things were. Now, things aren't like that anymore. Things are collapsing. So I think today is where we become proactive. Do you think we'll have the staff to make that happen, or is this more wishful thinking?
We have to see how it goes. I want to be honest with you, Councilman Reyes. I mean, the one thing we have, our greatest asset at CRA is just this phenomenal staff. They're creative, they're smart, they're entrepreneurial, and this is the time for us to do that planning and to do that policy development, and that's where we're trying to focus people's efforts. But as I noted, if you take our revenue projection decline, you layer on ERAF, about half of our project areas would not be able to cover their debt service and their operating expenses. And operating expenses, that's staff. So we're going to have to find a way to cut into that operating expense as fast as we can over the next 2 years so that we can hold on to that amazing staff that we've assembled over the last several years. And I think that staff has the capacity to come up with a lot of the strategies that you're discussing. And certainly with the leadership of this committee that is pretty progressive in coming up with creative strategies to induce development, we're happy to work in partnership with you, but we got to cut our operating expenses. And I guess the other thing to note is, if this ERAF shift stays and the revenue projections are as we anticipate, it means that our work program for half of those project areas will become nothing. All we'll be able to do is to come up with ideas, but we won't be able to fund projects. We won't be able to do big infrastructure projects. We won't have the funds that we've all relied upon to do the kind of catalytic development and subsidy of catalytic development that we relied upon.
So we may not have the capital, but we
won't have the capital, but we have the
could
intellectual capital.
Can create the destination for capital.
Right.
And that is through these police powers that we have through not only our housing policies, but
Incentives.
through our zoning.
Yeah, right.
So I think we need to reach that balance somewhere. And so I understand this pressure because of our overworked staff. But I also know if we don't take this opportunity, we're going to lose it again. And I think we only have like an 18-month window here. If the federal policies take root, there's going to be a different type of reaction to the market, and we won't be ready for it. So I just...
No, I agree.
Any other
With you, Mr. Reyes.
questions or comments?
No, I'm fine. Alan, you have a question? No, I'm no, we're,
I do have one.
Mr. Reyes.
What was the famous quote in that movie? Push the button, Max.
Yeah, I tell you,
I got to add that to my Netflix.
we got some fans. Yeah, it was a great movie. Great movie.
Okay.
And what was the guy, the guy, he played in, Wild Wild West, he played the swashbuckler who said, he played Artemis Gordon in Wild Wild West, and what is his name?
You're not talking to the character Hezekiah, are you? No?
Anyway,
Tony Curtis's sidekick? Tony Curtis?
no, this was the bad guy that,
We'll get the video.
he and Tony Curtis were sword fighting.
Oh.
And he's the one that said, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. Anyway, Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
So, Mr. City Attorney, because we do not have a quorum, all actions that we've taken today will be forwarded to the council as a communique from the chair. And with that said, this committee's adjourned. Okay. Push the button, Max.